All right, welcome to the latest part in the series on what to do if your book stops selling. Now, forgive the the background. I'm kind of stuck in the renovated or in process renovated studio at the moment, so I just sort of deal with what's behind me. And I know I look kind of dark compared to what's here, but this is how we have to do it this morning because there's noise outside the room, and I need to be quiet for here with you guys. So, anyway. This video is meant to be briefer than the others. It is simply meant to pause and let's get some headspace realigned. That's what this is about, okay? So the first one we talked about some encouragement, right? And then we had a few videos on some tricks and techniques. And now this one here is let's get our head on right on a single point. And the point is this: patience. Patience, patience, patience. And I'll do a little metaphor or analogy, if you want to call it, okay? So if I were going to have chili for dinner, right, and say I was going to eat at 5 o'clock, so, and I say I started my chili at 4, and I got everything ready, put it all in the pot, I got it cooked, and, pulled it from the stove, sat down, ate it. It's going to taste one way, right? And it's going to be pretty good, but it won't be fantastic. But if I had started my chili at, let's just say, I went nuts. Let's say I started at 7 in the morning, 7. And I got all my stuff together, threw it all in the pot, got it simmering, got it going, and the whole day it's either been simmering or a series of, simmer, turn the heat off for a minute, simmer, heat off for a bit, and so on until dinner time, right? When I have my chili at 5, from my 7 o'clock start, that chili is going to be remarkably different and remarkably better than my chili that I made had I started at 4, okay? So the same principle here now applies to the sales of books. Is you have to let it cook. You have to let it cook. All those things that we talked about in the other videos, those are all your ingredients, right? And your project or projects or your career, if you want to call it that, is the pot. That's what you're putting everything in. You have to let it cook. You gotta give it time. Let it simmer, let it boil, let those flavors get together. Let you learn as you're taste testing along the way. Oh, this part tastes really good. Oh, this one's a little bit salty. And you get the idea, right? You get the comparison, okay? And that's where you make your adjustments, right? So next time when you go make your chili, right, last time I put way too much salt. This time we're gonna back off, right? And then we're gonna go really light maybe, and then adjust as needed until we have the right salt level. So same idea, okay? So I want to encourage you by saying that simply the publishing world, especially nowadays, being extraordinarily and sillily flooded and people abusing the system with AI is terrible. The point is you have to let your stuff cook, right? You have to let the reader have time to read your stuff if they're a first-time reader. I mean, give them a chance to read the book, and you can't expect them to rush home and sit down that second and do your book and say read it for 5-6 hours or however long your book is, right? No, they're going to put on the side and they're going to maybe go about life for a week before they pick it up. Like, who knows, right? So let things cook. You got to let it cook. And likewise with the online efforts. I mean, the beauty about the online thing is purely in the sense that if you're putting stuff out there and then the search bots are coming along and they're finding all your stuff, that's a way of cooking too, right? Because now it's getting your stuff, it's finding it, and now it's putting it into the search engine where people could find whatever they're looking for. So again, that's another method of cooking, right? So let that happen. Let that we talked about the underscore foundation or the soil, that stuff in the other videos. That's what I'm talking about. That's the stuff that needs to cook. That's the stuff that you got to play the long game. Publishing is a marathon, not a sprint, right? I've said that before. You have to play the long game. If it happens to be a sprint, like by chance your book like skyrockets off the shelves or off the charts or whatever you want to call it, well, that's great. But at the same time too, you lucked out. So for the most part, every or writer and or artist has to do the marathon thing. So do that, okay? And allow time. And if things don't change like right away, that's fine. Remember, you're letting it cook, right? Chili doesn't taste great right off the hop. Even when you first put all the ingredients in the pot, even if everything, the ground beef, for example, is cooked, because that's the important part to make sure it's cooked. But even if you had that cooked and you put your stuff together and then you took a taste right away, it's going to be like, well, right? You need to let it go and let it have some time. So that's my encouragement is let your chili cook. Let your chili cook. Provided you've been proactive, let it cook, Okay, if you haven't been proactive, then there's like that famous saying, right? Don't be upset by the results you didn't get from the work you didn't do. Okay, so keep that in mind too. And then lastly, I'm going to touch on this once and then I'll leave it alone, is simply money. Okay, we're going to talk money. Yeah, I know. But listen, bottom line is, if you're putting more dollars into your project than you are getting out of your project, you need to stop and see what's happening in terms of why that's occurring. Otherwise, that's a massive leak in the budget. And further, I mean, it's one thing to have an outlay, because use a small number, let's say $50, right? And you put 50 on a campaign, and you know, your 50 just doesn't come back to you, right? And maybe you only got 30 out of it. Well, obviously you're not, you lost 20, you're not going to repeat that campaign, you're not going to keep doing it. And I understand author desperation. I understand what it's like to really go after it and almost do it at all costs, and even monetary costs. And I get that, but at the same time, you have to be objective on your return on investment. Okay, Harlan Ellison, famous writer, he said this in a much more poignant way, but I'll keep it clean for this video. But it basically said, money flows towards the writer, right? In other words, he was saying, don't pay to get your stuff published, right? Let people pay you. And this is, of course, pre-indie publishing boom stuff. But the point is the same. It still applies in the indie world, right? If you're consistently investing in these projects and you're not seeing a return, or if you're only seeing a minor return, 10%, 20%, whatever it might be, that's when we have to look at the stuff we're talking about. That's what we need to reevaluate what's going on, right? And you need to watch yourself on that particular point, because you don't want to lose bucks doing this, right? It's one thing to, again, put the funds out there and then wait on the return, and it may take, say, again, let's use the $50 analogy, right? It may take, say, a month to get that 50 back. Okay, fine. So you had a month. But then everything above and beyond that, of course, is extra. But if you put that 50 out and months and months go by and you're not getting that 50 back, you got to reevaluate what you put that 50 in, and are you going to ever do it again, right? So that's the two things I just wanted to cover this video. Is one, simply just let things cook, right? Let's take a breather. We'll do a lesson next video. But right now, let's just take a breather and let things cook, and let that be encouragement. Remember, better chili, right? You want the better chili. So let things cook. That's the encouragement, because then at the end, you're going to have some good chili, and people are going to like your good chili, right? And then two, simply, again, just watch your dollars, right? Make sure that that you're going to get a return on investment. If you're not, then it's a money pit, and you have to stop and you have to reevaluate that, okay? Publishing is expensive. Why? Because we're dealing with art, we're dealing with things that take a lot of time, we're dealing with, physically speaking, we're dealing with paper, we're dealing with ink, we're dealing with cover stuff. All those materials in the real world have been rising in costs as well, okay? So your printer, it's not their fault that their costs are the way they are. Paper has gone up crazy. It's how it is. Ink has gone up. It has, okay? Even glues have gone up, okay? And any printer will also tell you, okay, that they're operating on a very thin profit margin, okay? We're talking, I'm not talking the big printers. I'm talking like your local printer down the street who can put books together. They're doing like a 3% profit. Think about that for a minute. Like every $100 that they bring in, they get $3. Or 3%. You get the point, right? So anyway, return on investment, be careful of that. And then lastly, let your chili cook. And we'll leave it there. We've already hit 10 minutes. This went on way longer than expected. Sorry about that, but I hope it illustrates the point. And then we'll come back next time with a great tip on, it's going to come with a very stern disclaimer, but at the same time, it's one that is super effective. So be back for the next one. Okay, so subscribe, like, share, because again, I want you back for the next one because it's important, but it has to be done very carefully. See you then.